I feel like there's something missing here. That certainly shouldn't be like that. Definitely used to be something in there. Pretty sure there's a few things missing here too. And there definitely used to be more in there. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see from my little intro there, there's been some stuff going on with the Jeep. Things have definitely escalated. So let's have a walk around, give you an update, see what we've been up to and what that's all in preparation for. Let's go over what has been going on here then. So as you can see, there's a few things missing. We've got no speedo, we've got no fuel gauge. Indicator switch is just hanging loose. This is the light switch down here, which has been removed from the dash. That's the flasher unit for the indicator, and then we've got a big bundle of wires and general mess going on here. Columns off the steering, well, the outer tube is off the steering column. Obviously the steering wheel's missing. So we've been basically digging into this to reverse engineer the wire and figuring out exactly how this has been set up, because it's not factory standard, and trying to get ready to start correcting things for a new harness that I should be picking up in a couple of days. So the main job we wanted to get out of the way first was the steering column. And what I mean by that is the rewiring of the horn. This Jeep had a horn button down here and it was all wired up wrong. So basically, instead of having the horn in your steering wheel, you had a little button down there. I wanted to correct that, because if we're going to rewire it, we want to try and get it more factory than it was. That's what I always try and do here. So that meant we had to figure out how to get the horn rewired into this column here, and that's not quite as easy as you might think. Basically, as a wire runs down that column with the button connected to the top of it that you can see there. And then at the base of the column, there's a little ring, brass ring, with the wire coming out at the top, you can see above there. And basically, that is brazed to that, the wire is brazed to that ring, and then the metal tube goes over the column, and there's a little plate on top of that with a little brass button that keeps contact to that brass ring, and that has the wire connected to it, which then goes to the horn. So when you push the button in the wheel, that completes the circuit and makes your horn go off. This is the little plate that goes on the tube. You can see there's a little brass button. So that's always got tension on it, pushing it down. You see there, I can push it up. That keeps it tight to that brass ring, so that's always got a nice contact regardless of where it is, because as you turn the steering wheel, this will turn around with the green tube on top of the column, and that will keep a nice ring, a connection to the ring, sorry, wherever it is. And then you just connect the wire to this little post here, and then that goes into the horn. Now, although that might sound like quite a simple task, that's actually quite an awkward thing to replace. You have to feed the cable down from the top, because the button's connected to it when you get it, and you can't pull it off, you'd trash it. So you have to feed the whole wire down from the top, find it through that little hole in top of the plate, which is about the same size as this little hole here, because this is one of the screw holes where this goes on, and there's another little hole in the column about that size, which you have to pull the wire through, which is not very easy. You basically have to use a thin bit of brass rod or something like that, bend a little hook in it, and then get someone to put the wire down and wiggle it around whilst you try and catch it with a hook and then pull it up. It's a bit of an arse. It took a few attempts, but we got there in the end. We also had to pull the old cable out, which was still in it. That had been torn off about 6 inches down the column, so we couldn't use it. So we had to get the soldering iron off to slowly erode the brazen that connected it to that ring, and then remove that first. So you can see there that the new wire is there, ready to be attached to the ring. Now, I thought you could solder that on. Turns out you cannot solder that on. That needs to be brazed again or something like that. I do not have the equipment to do that, unfortunately, so I have someone that I know that's going to come down and attempt to fit that on there for me. That is a bit of a pain in the arse, and it just makes everything a lot more awkward. We did manage to test the horn though. My father basically held the cable on the brass ring and then held another wire from the horn to the brass ring to make a representation of what the circuit would be, whilst I pushed the button. And I've got a rubbishy little video here that I'll pop that up for you, so you can see that the horn now does work with the button. It's just we need to get this cable attached. Once we've got this cable attached, the column tube can go back on, the new plate can be fitted to it, and hopefully that'll all work as it should have out of the factory. So here's the actual tube that goes over the steering column. So this is the bottom end. You can see here where that plate with the little brass button goes onto the ring at the bottom. This bit slots into the clip that sits just above the steering box. And then that's the end where you have your steering wheel. If I bring this in for you to the camera so it can actually focus, you can see there where the plate goes on with a little brass button. This is where it sits onto the top of the steering box. And if you spin it around to the other end, this is where the steering wheel will go, and that's just a basic tube. But you can see that that's a bit rough around the edges. Really could be cleaned up, just smoothed down and repainted. Get all this cleaned up, and that's full of grease where someone kept shoving grease into the steering box at some point. Don't put grease in your steering box, put oil in it, that's what it's made for. Grease cannot lubricate the bushings in the sector shaft, just a side rant. Anyway, so today I'm going to get the old grinder out with a little sanding disc and see if I can't clean this up and get it prepped, ready to be sprayed green. And here's the steering wheel. As you can see, it's got that horrible old black paint that I popped on it when I first got it, just to cover up the manky green that was on it. But I have started to rub it back down to its original green Bakelite sort of material. So if I bring this in close for you, you can see on the back there, that sort of skanky green. That's what it was painted when I got it, and obviously I then put a black on top of it. You see it's got a grey primer under the skanky green, and then this is the way it should be. So I'm going to very tediously rub all this back down to how it should be, and then find some way of like polishing it up a bit just to take all the little scratches out. That shouldn't be too hard, and we'll have a nice steering wheel that looks as it should in factory, rather than being tight, or not tight I should say, rather than being lazy and just buying a reproduction one. We'll have a nice original one that's been restored. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at the wiring then. So you can see from just this little example here how much of a bodge up and mess the wiring in my Jeep is. It just looks awful. So we're going to have all this out, change it all, nice new wiring harness. I was going to do the video on changing this bulb, but I couldn't see the point in doing that before changing the wires, because then I'll just have it apart again. Here you can see the original board, which will be getting kept because that's fine. It just needs new wiring done, put to it. And I've been hacking away. You can see where this has just had repairs and stuff over the years. It's just a complete mess. So I've been hacking away and I've figured out what every cable is and where it goes and how they've wired this in. And at the front here with the mess, that's basically exactly the same thing. This has all just been me backtracing cables, figuring out how this is wired up, figuring out obsolete cables and removing them, and getting a plan of what we're going to do to basically make this have nice new wiring, closer to, it won't be exactly as factory, but it'll be a lot closer, because we're going to keep it with 12 volt and everything. And you can see here all of the holes that have been drilled in it over the years for various things, God knows what. This is where the light switch is. Now this Jeep from the factory, because of its age, shouldn't have had a light switch like this. That should have had a push-pull. So I'm going to get a push-pull, and that'll go in here, the original hole. This one will get filled in. This hole here, I believe, is the original hole for the blackout drive light that sits on the left wing. This one I don't think is anything important, but this is probably where I'm going to put an indicator switch. And then these ones are just irrelevant. That one there, you might be able to see that little bump. That's where someone's welded in the original hole for the original ignition switch. So I'm going to move my ignition switch to there, and then my little ignition light here, which I'm going to keep, will be going in this hole here. So that'll be changed a bit. Where that horrible indicator switch is, I hate this thing, that will be totally removed, and I'll fill these holes in. And then where the ignition is, just under that level with the rest of them, should be the panel light switch, which I will get one of them and pop it in. That might not have panel lights initially. I'll just put the switch in ready, and then I'll get the panel lights at another stage. And if I bring you under the dashboard here, you can see all them holes and that complete mess. That's where the remains of an original starter switch were, the foot starter. And you see I was humming and hawing about making this completely factory and putting a foot starter and everything in, but turned out that's not going to be how it goes, due to advice from Cliff at Universal Jeep Supplies and just using a bit of common sense. So had to get some help with my father to get that out, because that was completely seized up. That's a two-person job anyway, because you got the nuts on the other side of the dash and this on this side of the dash. Excuse the lawnmower, I think that is, or something in the background. So anyway, we finally got that off, and I'm going to get a new foot starter and put it in there, so at least that looks how it should do. And under the bonnet here, or the hood for the Americans of you, you can see that I've removed the oil bath air filter. That's so that I can get access to some bits under here. There should be two like studs come through there that are missing. I'm going to just pop a couple of bolts through them. That's to hold a wiring board, little wiring board, and I'll need that when I do the rewiring. That's just something that was bypassed when they put it in. So there'll be a little wiring board there. We'll have the solenoid and the ignition coil connected to it, just to keep things a bit neat. And then you can see I've got my solenoid down here, which will be kept, and I'll just wire it up and make it look a bit more tidy. I don't know if you can see it down there, but the alternator wires are pathetic, so I'll change them out as well, just because they're crap. So basically when that's done, that'll just have a nicer, newer, much cleaner wiring system, much safer, because some of this is really a fire hazard. It's just awful, and we'll be good to go hopefully. And probably whilst we're at it, have the starter motor out so that can be cleaned up and repainted and possibly even rebuilt. Future truffle here. So I noticed when I was doing the clips for you on this video that the entire last section the camera wasn't actually on, because I'm a moron and managed to record entire things without the camera actually recording anything. So I thought I'd better just do you a quick little goodbye here like this instead. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll make the channel grow more.